Well, hello there, mateys. Welcome to the extravaganza of a lifetime, and by that I mean the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And the parade is actually these stories. I'm going to be telling ghost stories of the paranormal phenomena, but with a St. Patrick's Day twist. And did I just say ahoy, mateys? Oh, I guess I'm wrong there, because ahoy, mateys is a pirate. But maybe they're pirate St. Patrick's Day stories. Who knows? They're actually not. But let's begin with the stories. Be sure to click like on this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, because we do these on-camera videos. It's my new series. I've done 3 videos already, and I almost put 2 fingers up. And if I put 1 finger up, well, that would be absolutely disastrous. I'd get canceled. But we can't do that right now. So guys, let's sink our teeth into this video, and let's enjoy. And I just had 2 cups of coffee earlier today, so I'm going to be full of energy. 33 years old and still got life. Anyway, guys, let's enjoy these scary true ghost stories. Share, comment, like, and this intro took way too longer than I wanted it to. Let's go. I arrived in Dublin 2 days before St. Patrick's Day, full of anticipation and excitement to experience the city's legendary celebrations. As an avid traveler and someone with a fascination for the paranormal, I'd heard whispers of odd happenings in the older parts of the city. Tales passed down by locals, rarely spoken aloud, but never quite forgotten. I'd always dismissed them as folklore, but on that chilly, damp evening in early March, I was about to have an encounter that would make me question the line between myth and reality. I'd spent the afternoon wandering the winding cobblestone streets near Dublin's historic district, not in the tourist-heavy Temple Bar, but a quieter, less traveled neighborhood called Chapel Street, known to a few locals as a repository of old legends. The sky was a swirling mass of gray and blue, the air damp and clinging, and I could feel a subtle chill that wasn't just from the cold. I walked past shuttered storefronts and ancient brick facades, my footsteps echoing on the narrow lanes as the city prepared for its grand celebrations. As dusk fell, I found myself in a small, dimly lit alleyway that branched off from a narrow lane. I'd taken this route on a hunch, remembering a local's offhand remark about old spirits wandering when the veil is thin. I wasn't expecting much, just a quiet moment away from the crowds. But then I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. At first, I thought it was a thick of the fog. A faint glow, like a smattering of green luminescence, seemed to hover near a weathered stone wall. I strained my eyes to focus, half expecting to see a reflection from a neon sign. Instead, there was a small figure, a man, or something like a man, unmistakably small and oddly spectral. His features were hard to discern, partly blurred by the mist, yet there was a distinct quality in his eyes, an intensity that spoke of centuries of secrets. He was dressed in looked like a Thedobor green garments, and his face bore an expression of both mischief and sorrow. My heart hammered in my chest as I slowly approached, every instinct telling me to run while my curiosity pinned me to the spot. I recalled reading about the Little Host, a local urban legend in which the spirit of a leprechaun, once a trickster of sorts, was said to wander the old streets on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. But instead of the whimsical imagery of a merry little hollow with a twinkle in his eye, what I saw was something altogether more haunting. A presence that radiated a quiet, desperate longing. I must have been mere steps away when the figure turned towards me. His eyes, reflecting an almost otherworldly sadness, looked with mine. I remember feeling a profound chill that wasn't entirely from the weather. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The distant hum of city life faded into a soft background murmur. In that instant, I felt as though I was witnessing not just a ghost, but an echo of an ancient past, of being caught between worlds. He spoke softly, and through his words were in English Gaelic. I understand the tone, a mix of apology and plea. It was as if he was trying to explain his eternal wandering, the loneliness of being an outcast from a time long gone. I could only guess this message. Perhaps he lamented a life of trickery turned tragic, and was a warning sign of something, a secret locked within the history of this very street. The words themselves lost in the whispering wind, but the emotion was undeniable. I tried to speak, but my voice faltered. The spectral figure began to fade, this from dissolving into the swirling mist as quickly as they appeared. In his final moment of visibility, I swear I caught a glimpse of something inscribed on the stone wall behind it, a faded carving of an ancient Gaelic symbol, one I later learned was associated with protection and guidance. Whether it was a clue left behind or a manifestation of his hiding presence, it left with me a lingering sense of wonder and dread. After that encounter, I wandered back towards the more illuminated streets, my mind racing with questions. Had I seen what I thought I had? The intensity of the experience was overwhelming, yet it was imbued with a sense of deep historical sorrow. In the following days, as the city burst into the jubilant chaos of St. Patrick's Day, I couldn't shake the image of that forlorn leprechaun ghost from my mind. Every shadow, every glimmer of green in the twilight, reminded me of the encounter. I later learned that in certain parts of Dublin, particularly in neighborhoods with a rich tapestry of old stories, there have been scattered accounts of similar sightings. Locals spoke in hushed tones of an otherworldly presence that appears on the fringes of St. Patrick's celebrations. While most dismiss these tales as overactive imaginations fueled by the festive atmosphere, my experience was anything but imaginary. The realism of the encounter, the way the environment, the weather, and the ancient urban architecture conspired to create a scene that felt palpably real, cemented in my mind that some legends, no matter how fantastical they may seem, have roots in truth. The subtle interplay between history and the supernatural left an indelible mark on me, and I returned home with a renewed sense of both wonder and caution. That night, as I sat in a small Dublin pub, listening to the melancholic strains of traditional Irish music, I pondered the mystery of that ghostly figure. It wasn't a tale of pots or gold or harmless mischief. It was a story of loss, of time slipping away, and of souls unable to carry on. I realized that most haunting experiences are not the ones filled with overt horror, but those that leave you with a deep, unsettling knowledge of life's impermanence and the echoes of history that lingers in the shadows. I share this story not as a work of fiction, but as an account of what I truly experienced on a foggy St. Patrick's Day in Dublin. A day when the veil between our world and the past grew thin, and I became face to face with a ghost that reminded me that some legends live on, in the whispers of old stones, in the quiet eyes of forgotten souls. In the weeks that followed, I found myself drawn back to those old alleys, trying to catch a glimpse of that spectral figure. I spoke with several locals, and while their stories varied, a common thread emerged. An ancient leprechaun spirit, misunderstood and sorrowful, wandering the streets on the eve of St. Patrick's Day. The experience changed me. It taught me that our past, with all its mysteries and regrets, often reaches out to remind us of the fleeting nature of life and the enduring power of the legends. This encounter, grounded in real places in the urban lore of Dublin, remains one of the most unnerving experiences of my life. It wasn't a horror movie scene. It was a quiet, deeply personal brush with the paranormal. A moment when the fabric of reality felt both fragile and profound. I arrived in Cork on a drizzly autumn evening, seeking quieter corners of the city away from the usual tourist throngs. I'd heard that the Shannon district, with its labyrinth cobblestone lanes and century-old brick walls, was steeped in history and whispers of the past. With my camera slung over my shoulder and a notebook tucked in my pocket, I set out on foot, eager to capture the authentic soul of this storied part of town. The chill in the air was palpable, not merely from the autumn rain, but from an almost tangible sense of anticipation. I wandered down narrow streets lit by the soft glow of old-fashioned street lamps, their light flickering against the weathered facades. In the distance, the faint melancholic peal of the Shannon bells resonated, a timeless reminder of lives long past and secrets waiting to be uncovered. I found myself drawn to a particularly quiet alley off the main thoroughfare, where the modern bustle of Cork seemed to fade into a hushed reverence. The walls here were adorned with faded murals and time-worn carvings that hinted at ancient lore. I paused in front of a weathered stone wall that looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. That's when I heard it, a soft, almost impenetrable whisper that seemed to float from behind the wall, as if the stones themselves were murmuring secrets. Intrigued and somewhat unnerved, I stepped closer. The sound wasn't a voice in the conventional sense. It was more like the rustle of a fabric in a still room, or the sigh of the wind trapped in a narrow passage. My pulse quickened as I pulled out my notebook and began scribing observations. The air around me grew noticeably colder, and I could feel a presence, a subtle shift in the atmosphere, as though someone or something was watching. Then in the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A slender figure emerged from the shadows, a man, small in stature, clad in tattered green clothing that looked like it belonged to another era. His eyes, dark and deep, carried a sorrow that was almost unbearable to witness. I couldn't tell if it was something smiling or crying. His expression was ambiguous, like the smile of someone who has seen too much and lost too many years. The figure drifted forward, almost gliding along the rough stone, and as he approached, the distant echoes of the bell seemed to fade into a haunting silence. For a long moment, I stood frozen, caught between the impulse to flee and an overwhelming need to understand. He moved closer until I could see that his face was etched with lines of grief and weariness, a spectral echo of a life long extinguished. I felt an inexplicable pull, a sense that he was not hostile, but desperate to be remembered, to share a story that had been buried in the folds of time. In a voice that seemed both distant and intimately near, he murmured words in an old Irish dialect that I couldn't fully comprehend. The meaning was lost in the whisper, but the emotion was clear. Regret, longing, and a plea for understanding. I attempted to speak, to ask him who he was or what he needed, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I simply listened, my heart pounding in the silence between us. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, the figure began to fade. His form dissolved into the mist that was rising from the sun-soaked pavement, leaving behind only the echo of his sorrow and the faint, lingering chill that prickled my skin. In his wake, on that same ancient stone wall, I noticed an inscription, a barely legible Gaelic phrase etched into the stone, seemingly left there as a marker of the passing. I later learned that the phrase was a blessing, one to guide lost souls home. Through its premise, meaning remained as elusive as the ghost who had receded into the darkness. Over the next few days, as I continued my exploration of Cork and immersed itself in its festive yet subdued atmosphere in the lead-up to St. Patrick's Day, I couldn't shake the memory of that encounter. Every quiet corner and shadowed alleyway seemed to whisper secrets of bygone eras, and I found myself revisiting the era, hoping for another glimpse, another word from the spectral figure. I spoke with several local shopkeepers and residents in the Shannon district, and while their recollections varied, some dismissed the incident as a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. Others spoke in hushed tones of similar encounters. An old man in a tiny bookshop recalled how, on misty evenings, the spirit of a long-forgotten trickster would appear, not to cause harm, but to lament the loss of a time when the magic of Ireland was alive and unbridled. Though no one could say with certainty if my experience was that same legend, the consistency of the tales lent a weight of authenticity to the encounter. In the aftermath, I poured my thoughts and emotions into a long, detailed video, narrating the event with as much honesty as I could muster. I aim not only to recount the eerie experience, but to capture the profound, bittersweet feeling of witnessing something that felt both timeless and tragically mortal. I described the city's vibrant yet melancholic spirit during those days in Cork, a reminder that beneath every bustling street and modern facade lies a history rich with sorrow, beauty, and mystery. This encounter left me with more questions than answers. Who was that sorrowful figure, and what was his story? And more broadly, what does it mean when the past reaches out to remind us of its lingering presence? Even though I never received an explanation, the experience itself became a masked part of my journey, a compelling story that resonated within the deep, often inexplicable currents of our shared human history. I share this account with you not merely as a ghost story for St. Patrick's Day, but as a personal testament to the unexpected ways that the supernatural can intertwine with our everyday lives. In Cork, I learned that even in a city familiar to me, the shadows of the past can still emerge, whispering secrets and stirring the souls in ways that both eerie and beautiful things collide. And perhaps the true magic of these ancient streets, a reminder that every stone, every shadow, holds a story waiting to be heard.